All right, on to the next presentation by Gerard Walls, titled Near Peer Teaching in Radiation Oncology, a Proof of Principle Study for Treatment Planning Skills.
Thanks very much. I'm just going to test if I can control the screen. I don't seem to be able to do that. There we go. Okay, so thanks very much to the ROECSG team for inviting me along to talk. Good evening from Belfast. It's great to join the meeting. It's going great so far. So this talk's all about near peer teaching in radiation oncology. We ran a proof of principle study in relation to treatment planning skills. My name is Gerard Walls. I'm a final year resident here in Belfast. So the outline of the talk here, we'll go through the background to why we did this. We'll talk about the methods. We'll go through the early outcomes and the overall impact, and then where we're going next. I've got no conflicts. And here's a photograph of our two centres in Northern Ireland on the one day that it was sunny last year. So near peer teaching, it's self-explanatory. People from a similar social group teach each other and learn in doing that. It really relies on the two concepts of social and cognitive congruence. So in terms of social factors, you know, if people are comfortable around each other and know each other well and are at similar age, potentially similar background, there tends to be a more effective communication and less pressure. Cognitive congruence, if people are at a similar stage in their training or professional development, more effective communication might be used, and pitching information might be more effective as well. So this paradigm is openly used in multiple medical disciplines, but there's no real literature on radiation oncology, and we thought we'd try and address this. This first came to our attention during some recent research we completed here in Belfast and in Derry, looking at radiotherapy training in the modern era. We've seen that there were snippets of peer teaching being used informally, but only really around the exam time. It was rated very useful though. So that gave us the sort of emphasis to go ahead and seek out how we could adopt this in our practice. And using the quality improvement framework, we thought that would be the best way to address the problem. Quality improvement framework is very popular in the UK at the moment in terms of service development, and it starts with a root cause analysis, a phenomenon you'll all be very aware of. The factors that came out of that root cause analysis as a discussion amongst the trainees and trainers, nothing here really novel. We all probably can relate to these factors no matter where you are in the world. The residents cause some problems, the attendings cause some problems, dare I say it, and there's also some institutional factors as well. So bringing all that together then, we built a driver diagram, which is another part of the quality improvement methodology. It's effectively inverse planning. You start with what you want to end up with, and we wanted to establish a durable, high quality treatment planning tutorial program. And from that then you work out, well, what are we trying to do in that program? What are we trying to achieve for trainees or residents? And then of course then what other sub skills are involved in those tasks, and that ends up producing a list of actions for us to then specifically work on in the QI methodology. QI methodology revolves around plan, do, study, act cycles. Here we establish your aims, you define your pre-specified success marker like a clinical trial, you identify possible changes you can implement and then test them in sequence, implement the ones that stick, bin the ones that don't work, and then disseminate the learning to other settings. So overall, we wanted to establish a high quality program of teaching focused on treatment planning skills for both Belfast and Derry's radiation oncology department. This picture doesn't really do the team justice because we're all socially distanced around the edge of the group, but you get the gist of the intimate environment that we ended up settling on. We had to define our improvements, and we took ideas from the Oncology Registrars Forum, which is hosted by the Royal College of Radiologists, or the RO of the UK. So in terms of specific things, we thought it was really useful, really important, sorry, that we have an appropriate space in both centres to actually hold these sessions in terms of logistics, video linking, intimacy, and prevention of distractions. We thought along that same theme that protection from clinical work would be ideal for maximum learning. interdisciplinary input would be very helpful where appropriate. And we thought that having an attending present but not actually involved might be useful for those more technical issues that might come up and that are above the scope of the residents. An interactive format was needless to say very crucial to the whole process. And we thought, why not just propagate the learning that we gain and the work that we do and build a repository for future work as well. And that's what we did. We ran through to do the interactive format. To give an example, we talked about how we could implement video linking better and treatment planning on example pages that we distribute, both digitally and in paper format before each session. We had consensus ground rules on the logistics and in terms of what content we wanted. We had to get stakeholder buy-in from trainees and trainers as well. And also we wanted to develop it to both centres and have an online repository. And that's the sort of field we come up with. We've disseminated it and we're getting a paper and hopefully in write-up at the moment, and that's under review. Hopefully we'll then disseminate that to the policymakers here in the UK in terms of developing things outside our centre, outside our region. We've got quite high concordance in terms of getting the tutorials engaged and actually happening when they're supposed to. Lots of residents taking part. We've got high attendance rates around 75% mark, which isn't bad for a brand new program. And you'll see in the trends in the next picture how things are improving steadily over time. I've lost my my lines there, but generally the trends, you have to trust me, the trends are relatively upwards. In terms of satisfaction markers, we made up some surveys basically based on the research that we conducted 2 years ago, and almost everything is improving. Just a few issues. One thing to point out, in contrast to Ainsley Janowski's work there, we've seen improvements across senior and junior residents, and also for Michael Scherer's work, we're going to link on that in terms of developing e-contouring. We didn't really improve the inappropriate contact from clinical protection. That's something to take forward in the future. Impact then, we developed a new program. We've got exam preparation there for people. We've got good team working in terms of disciplines mixing, teaching experience and leadership opportunities for those who are coordinating each year. In terms of PDSA cycles, we've talked a bit about live planning there from Michael Scherer, and we want to bring that into our program. We've got lots of ideas for qualitative research as well. And I have to thank the whole team, and I'll leave you with some top tips on what we've done so far. Thank you very much.
Great presentation. The incorporation and combination of QI research methodologies and meta, it seems like a perfect marriage. Anyone that's done a QI committee that has any kind of education background knows it seems very similar to what I just learned before. So I'm really glad to see that happen and see in action. And also it provides an opportunity for medical education engagement in a lot of programs, at least in the States. Like you have to do a QI project. And now we can see a way for people to engage in medical education with support of the department to pursue that. And I think your presentation and project is a great example of that. One thing I noted in the abstract was that the benefit of the program was bet more for seniors than juniors, at least when they were reported on indicating that the benefit from the tutorials. You have a comment on that?
I think the relative benefit maybe was slightly greater, yeah. So I think our junior trainees initially suffer from low confidence, low familiarity with all the terms. They actually dread presenting at these meetings because they think that scary older trainees and residents will judge them, I think. But really, you know, that within a few months, we've seen that sort of confidence shift. You can see them fitting into the group much better, engaging in the language that they're supposed to use, and really developing rapidly. This program wasn't there when I was a junior trainee, and I really wish it was, because I really struggled talking the talk and openly discussing ideas. I was afraid in case I leaked my lack of knowledge or leaked my lack of competence. But I think the junior trainees have a very steep learning curve, so it's hard for them to start, and then they have a massive gain. In terms of the senior trainees, they also greatly benefit because the style of the content delivery and the testing of cases and the drawing out plans and GTVs on paper pages, you know, doing all that, that's really good for exam confidence and preparation. And I think in running up to the exam, it gives trainees and residents the sort of sense that, yeah, I'm ready for the exam and I'm ready for independent practice. So I think both groups really do stand to benefit, and there was an improvement overall in both, potentially greater though, as like you said, for one group more than the other, which is a bit different from Ainsley's work, where I think there was a very, very clear difference in terms of the benefit.
Yeah, great point. I think different levels in your training allow you to derive different benefits. Seniors are applying knowledge. Juniors get to learn knowledge that they weren't formally taught. And even if it's not as much, it allows them to engage more higher end concepts later in their training, because they're not figuring it out fourth year what they should have figured out maybe first or second year. So.
Yeah, and from a personal, personal note, that was really the whole reason that we got involved in the research a couple of years ago, and why we then went on to develop this. It was really that exact issue. You've hit the nail on the head.
Well, again, great work. I think we'll move on to the next project.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think we're going to continue to country hop. So from UK to Canada, and we have Andrew Arafin from the Department of Radiation Oncology in the London Regional Cancer Program, Canada. He'll be talking to us about remote contouring and virtual review during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Great, thanks so much for the introduction, Dr. Koch. Let me see, hopefully I can control this. All right, so I have no conflicts of interest to disclose. So the COVID-19 pandemic has led to disruptions in medical education, as shown in Dr. Meredith Giuliani's presentation. This excerpt from the systematic review here sums it up well, in which the authors state that the shutdown of academic institutions, alongside the novel challenge imposed on healthcare systems worldwide, have taken an immense toll on the quantity and quality of medical education. Prior to the pandemic, we followed apprenticeship-style rotations in which a resident was paired with one staff for 1 to 2 month rotations and followed their schedule in terms of clinical and radiation planning work. Contour review was usually done in person, with staff sitting down at a computer station one-on-one, or feedback was given after the fact via email or over the phone. To limit potential exposures and encourage coverage of clinical services during the pandemic, we moved to cohorted teams with week-on, week-off schedules. During this time, there was a lack of direction or expectation regarding case contouring. Residents noticed a decrease in the volume of cases contoured and a decrease in the proportion of cases reviewed with immediate feedback, which we discussed in Michael O'Shea's talk was quite important in a contour teaching. To address these issues, we proposed the Recover COVID-19 framework consisting of 2 processes: case procurement and virtual contour review. The case procurement process used a mentorship style model in which senior residents helped junior trainees with case selection. A major asset was a virtual tracking board that is used in our department that lists all cases that need contouring, their statuses, and due dates. Senior residents used this and considered staff availabilities and case complexity, whereas junior residents considered their own learning goals, availabilities, and case complexity when determining case assignment. Once a case was selected, senior residents notified staff, and the assignment was tracked on a separate form to avoid overlap. With regard to the virtual contour review, we wanted to use a software platform that could replicate the in-person review process as much as possible. Capabilities we considered including screen sharing, remote control functionality to allow collaboration, audio-video calling, secure data transmission to allow exchange of patient-level information. And our institution provided access to Microsoft Teams, which had all the features we required. This is a demonstration of the contour review process. I'm sharing my screen with my colleague, Wei, who I'm engaging with using the audio video calling feature. And here I'm editing a contour using a remote desktop connection to my institution. On this screenshot, Wei has requested control of my desktop. And with this feature, he can edit the contour using my desktop connection while describing his thoughts in real time. And you can see that there are actually 2 cursors on the screen here, indicating that both he and I can edit the contours at the same time. Data were prospectively collected with residents completing a case log after each contour case was completed. Data included the type of, the data included the format of the review, the perceived educational value of the case overall, perceived educational value of the review, learning points from the case, and qualitative feedback from the program. Descriptive and comparative statistics were used to analyze the data. Panel A shows a plot of the number of resident cases contoured over time. Phase 1 was a 4-week period prior to the initiation of the program, as indicated by the red arrow, whereas phase 2 was a 4-week period after. Panel B shows a bar graph of the mean cases contoured per week, split between the two phases, indicating a significant difference between them. And panel C shows a pie chart showing how cases were reviewed between the two cases. We see that a large proportion of cases in phase 1 were not reviewed with the resident directly, or feedback was given post hoc or after the fact. And this changed dramatically in phase 2. And so we noticed that introduction to the program coincided with an increase in the cases contoured and proportion of cases reviewed with virtual feedback. On this slide, panel A shows overall educational value of the entire remote contouring and review process by the type of review completed, as scored by residents on a Likert scale between 1 and 5, with 5 being of best value. Panel B shows the educational value of the feedback itself, again separated by the type of review completed. We see that residents felt that the overall educational value of the entire process and the educational value of the feedback itself to be similar between virtual and in-person cases, but significantly better than those reviewed post hoc or with delayed feedback or no feedback at all. We returned to regular apprenticeship style rotations in July 2020. However, contour review is still primarily done remotely with processes established and recover. Due to the success of this program, we sought more application of this technology, such as in-house practice oral examinations, weekly oral drills, and weekly physics sessions. We've shown that virtual review can supplement or be used as an alternative to in-person review, and that this platform is a feasible way to conduct this. This allows for increased flexibility to ensure educational value is maintained when in-person activities are not available during the pandemic and beyond. A strength of our program was that this was a resident-led initiative to address an educational need. Implementation challenges included its reliance on extra responsibility for senior residents in the case procurement process, and technical support requirements, such as the creation of technical support documents and having super users available for troubleshooting. Onboarding of individuals was particularly time-consuming and required buy-in from staff. Future studies could explore other applications of this technology in RO education, such as validating this approach in both formative and summative assessments or assessments involving multiple observers. And thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Great program, great initiative, and I think something which has been very much, an issue which has been felt globally during the pandemic. A question for you about the platform that you landed on. We locally had some discussions around this, and cybersecurity was a very big concern related to it. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts and where you landed in terms of platform choice.
Right. So Microsoft Teams, as I mentioned, was provided through our institution. So it was advantageous in 2 ways. The first was that it was no added cost to our program in using this platform. And secondly, it was vetted by our IT department in terms of its security and privacy features, in terms of the remote desktop connection and sharing patient level information. Although I'm sure, nothing's 100%, secure. So, but I think that it meets some of the requirements by governments and things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that seems to be a preferred solution. That's similarly what our institution landed on. Also, if anybody else has had any other platforms that are in use locally, I'd be quite interested to hear it, because I think there are some I still feel there are some limitations with the Teams platform. Any other questions related to this particular project?
I just wanted to highlight, a great example of a, residents found an issue and they made an initiative to continue their education during a difficult time. And you all should be commended for that, because, your education will end in however many years, regardless of a pandemic or not. So you took that effort. And one thing that I really noted, and I think is an important concept in education, medical education specifically, is timely feedback and how important it is. You had that one graph that showed, compared to no feedback, virtual or personal was significantly greater, but compared to post hoc feedback, might as well have gotten nothing, because it was no longer timely, it wasn't tangential to the experience, and it just shows how important that is. So just a great learning point for everyone that your work has demonstrated so well.
Thank you.
Actually, one other final question that comes to mind is related to the way that you said there was a virtual board where you sort of had the list of cases that for contouring. Is that correct? Have we still got you there, Andrew? Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I muted myself.
There you go.
Yeah, we had a virtual tracking board that was already in place prior to the pandemic. And it was a way that our department kind of tracks cases, their due dates, and where they were in the planning process.
That was actually my question about whether it was pre-existing or specifically implemented for this. So yeah. All right, good. So I think we're about at time. There's a couple of other questions in the chat, but perhaps you can respond to those offline. We're back at a breakout session now, I believe.